Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Macmillan Learning today for our Calculus webinar series. This is number 2 in our webinar series, Engaging Calculus Students in the Classroom. Well, Kiandra will be talking for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll have open questions at the end, but it'll go no longer than 30 minutes. So as a senior instructor of mathematics at Spelman College, Kiandra Johnson consistently strives to not only challenge students to make mathematics relatable, engaging, and easy to understand. A native of New Orleans, she received her Bachelor of Science from Xavier University and Master of Science from Emory University in Atlanta. Welcome, Kiandra.
All right, thank you, Nancy, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking a little bit of your day to join us to discuss engaging calculus in the classroom. So again, my name is Kiandra Johnson. I'm a senior instructor of mathematics at Spelman College, and one of my goals in my classroom is to make my students feel like they're actively engaged, that they have a part in their educational process. Not that I'm just, lecturing, but that learning is happening in a two-way system. So they're asking questions, I'm asking questions, and we're having a conversation about math. And we know active class participation improves critical and higher level thinking skills. And so that's one of the things that I want my students to experience and achieve throughout my classes. So then I start asking myself, why do students tend not to participate, right? What's the issue? And through research, I found some students, they feel like I just don't know the answer, right? I don't want to be put on spot. I don't want to feel, intimidated. Some people just hate being wrong, right? And then some of students feel that someone else knows a better answer. So you have one of their peers who seems to score really well on their assessments, and they think, you know what, someone else knows this answer. I'm just not going to say anything. And then for several students, it's that, or for some students, it's that they just weren't prepared, right? So when we're talking about class engagement and class participation, I always like to start off with class preparation. So in a previous webinar, we focused on class preparation. So I just want to do some snapshots of what we covered in a previous webinar. So in my classes, I tell students that if they document or simply write down the notes, the definitions, the theorems before class, that it will help our class participation and engagement significantly. In documenting, or again, just taking notes before class, it helps the students to be aware of the current content that I'm going to present. And if they're aware, then they can actively participate in class and engage. It reduces my lecture time because instead of using time to write some of the notes on the board, the students already have those notes written down in their notebook. So we can really spend time digesting and dissecting the definitions. What does it mean? Where does it come from? How do we use it? What are some applications? And that allows us to spend our class time, after we have those discussions, working through problems. And that fosters the active learning, right? So we can do think, pair, share, or we can do group problem sessions, or we can do in-class activities, which I'll discuss in a second. So homework also is a way of preparing students before coming to class so that they can be more engaged in class lecture. And I typically use online homework. I've used several different platforms. And in using online homework, I would start class discussing a homework problem. I find that students are more prepared to actively engage during class lecture if they have what I would call a warm up, right? So I mentioned in a previous webinar, if you go to a workout class, there's typically a warm up before you get started. So I want students to have that active engagement, to think that they're coming to work out. They're just coming to work out in a math setting. And also, I want to make the students feel secure in their previous content. And I found that that also helps them to actively engage during class lecture. So we know a common concern with online homework is some professors aren't sure that the students can adequately communicate their mathematical solutions. So I do collect homework spontaneously throughout the semester. I put a statement in my syllabus, and you can read some of it here. And I just let them know periodically I am going to come to class and collect homework. So make sure, even though the homework is online, make sure you're writing down each problem and ready to turn it in any given day. And also to ensure that the students are doing homework and that they can communicate math precisely, then I will assign 1 to 2 problems per homework set and ask them to turn in that one problem. And that way I can ensure that they know how to do the math and not just get to the final answer. So what does a typical class look like for me? So I have lecture time. And during that lecture time, again, I'm using the knowledge that students have documented. And so I always tell my students math is a language, right? You open a book and it looks like a foreign language. So math is a language, and it's my job, at least in the beginning of the semester, to interpret that language for them. So if they documented, we can spend time interpreting the language from what they have written in their notes to what they can thoroughly understand. And I want to teach my students how to read a math textbook and how to interpret it themselves. So as they go into their higher level math courses, so this is at the calculus setting. So as they go into their higher level math courses, they can actually read the book and interpret and be able to dialogue more efficiently with their math professors. After we're done lecturing and going through the concepts and making sure everyone understands, then I tend to embrace the I, we, you principle. So I'll do a problem for you, we do a problem together, and then I give you an opportunity to do the problem on your own. So when the students are doing the problems on their own, sometimes they can do, sometimes I break them up into groups of 2 to 4 students, and they can do the problems together. I've mentioned previously that I do think, pair, share a lot with the students. So I give them an opportunity to start the problem on their own. And then after an adequate amount of time, I say, okay, even if you're not done with the problem, I want you to pause wherever you are and exchange papers with your partner. And when they exchange papers, that gives the partner an opportunity to think about how they were thinking about the problem, look at how their colleague is thinking about the problem. And then after they have that time to share and to discuss with each other what they were thinking on how to approach this problem, they can collectively come up with an idea of how to best complete the problem if they hadn't completed it yet. So I think that's a great strategy because it gets the students not only doing math, but talking about math, and that significantly increases the student engagement during class. But in addition to that, because their tests are not group tests, then I do want the individualized feedback as well. So to assist me with the individualized feedback, I often use a student response system. This semester and last semester, I'm using the iClicker system. And I think iClicker is a great tool because it has a lot of great features. And if you would like additional information about the iClicker, then we can set up something, or you can set up something with one of the representatives that are also on the call to give you that additional information. But how do I use the iClicker? So while I'm lecturing, I use it 2 different ways. One, while I'm lecturing, we lecture, we go over content, and then we pause for a minute. Okay, let's do some problems. And then once I get a feel that all of the students are secure in doing the problems, then I'll say, okay, you guys, let's have a clicker quiz. And so the students will take out their devices, and then we have that clicker quiz. This is great because it gives me an opportunity to see individually what the students know. And it also, or more importantly, gives them an idea, right? They get an opportunity to see what they know. Oftentimes, I find my students, they feel like they know more than they actually do. And so when they actually sit down to that individualized quiz, then they can see, oh, yes, I got this, great. Or, oh man, I need to pay a little bit more attention to this error or that error. And then we have an opportunity to talk about that during the class. And when I'm doing the iClicker, previously I would just do it for assessment, kind of just in time teaching during the class. But what I found is that studies show a greater level of participation when students' contributions affect their grade. So with the iClicker, it's great. It has an integration into our LMS, and it also has an integration into Achieve. And then I can assign those points to a participation grade for my students, and they actually love it. Another thing, so that's pretty much a day-to-day lecture. From time to time, I like to add some variety into the classroom, and I use in-class activities in order to do that. So let's look at an example of both an in-class activity and an iClicker student response. So for the iClickers, Achieve has done a wonderful job at supplying professors and instructors with a set of iClicker questions for each section. I know for me, again, I've used student response systems in the past, but it was always very, very difficult for me to create good questions, thought-provoking questions for the students. So when I saw that this was a part of the Achieve package, I was elated. So here's an example of one of the questions that I can use for the iClicker. And again, I would just post this question on the board and then students can answer. Sometimes I'll give them an opportunity to talk to their partner, talk through the problem, and then we'll reassess or repoll. And then to the right here, here's an example of the in-class activity. And I created a little video of it, and I'll just play that now for a second. Okay, so it seems like the sound isn't working, so I'll just talk it through. So in the in-class activity, I love how it kind of looks like a recipe card. So it gives you the estimated pre-prep time, the estimated class prep time, some recommended related activities. So here is pre-class, here is post-class, some teaching tips, right? If you have a small class or if you have a large class, how to do this, and then how to actually implement the activity. So it's very descriptive. I also love how in here you can also get for each in-class activity, it has a set right here of clicker questions that you can download specific to that activity. So you can download iClicker questions for your entire lecture and use them in your lecture, or they are also incorporated in your in-class activities. So again, keeping students engaged in my calculus classroom, it starts with ensuring that students are prepared for class, right? Because I found that if a student is more prepared, then they are more apt to engaging in class. They feel more secure with the information and they want to contribute. I like to add variety to the lecture experience. So I do that through group assessments, through iClicker, which then promotes just-in-time teaching, and then in-class activities. So these are just a couple of the things that I have done that have worked wonderfully. I'm actually starting to see class data to reflect that this is working and, just want to share with others. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, now is a great time.
Kiandra, we do have a question here regarding iClicker.
Okay.
Our clickers in general. I usually think clickers are used for large lectures. On average, how many students are in your classroom?
Yes, that's an awesome question. So in my calculus class, I tend to not have more than 25, 26 students. That's the cap for our Cal 1, 2, and 3 courses. And I've used iClicker so far in both my Cal 1 and Cal 2 courses.
Okay. Follow-up question. I guess not sure it's the same person or not. Just looking for some insight, like how does the clicker thing? I think people are wondering how this works. There are some varying levels of familiarity with how a clicker at this point works. Maybe if you could just unpack that a little for folks.
Okay, I can. I'm gonna pause. Trying to remember how to pause from sharing my screen. Oh, sharing. Okay. Let me actually pull up. I think it might be helpful, and please let me know if it is or is not. I'm gonna pull up one of my lectures for my calculus course and just kind of go through how I use a clicker in that instance. Okay, so here are my lectures. So I use PowerPoint, right, to deliver my lectures. So I would just go through the content, right? So here we have a formula again in documenting. The students would have this in their notes. We would go through it. I would show them how to derive it from the product rule. And then we would do some practice problems. And then here's a clicker question, right? So in that conversation, in the lecture, I previously mentioned that the integration by parts formula is derived from the product rule. And then we see here, we have some clicker questions. And the students just simply take out their cell phones, their devices, their technology, and they would sign in. It's a very easy sign in. They have an app on their phone now. They can sign in and then answer the question. And then from there, we have the correct question. And then I may do another one. So here we have an actual problem. So this is just an illustration. So I'll do a couple of problems and then I go on to the next section, right? So in that clicker time, this gives them an opportunity to do the problem. Sometimes even I'll ask the students do the problem on a separate sheet of paper and turn it in. So again, that gives me an opportunity to check their work and make sure that they're doing it correctly and precisely, but I don't do that for every single problem, of course.
Thank you, Kiandra. Nancy, are you on as well? Okay, maybe some connectivity issues.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Are there any other questions?
If you want to give me ability to share, I can show people how it looks in Achieve, because I don't think we have any questions that aren't specific to the clicker, but we could show that and then wrap it up if you can pass it my way.
Sure. I'm passing it over right now.
Great. Thank you much. So let me get this bar out of the way. So in Achieve, this is the Achieve platform for those of you, and I would imagine many of you have not had a chance to look at it. I'm in the grade book right now, and this is where the iClicker sync takes place. And it's this simple. This message is simply informing people that iClicker is actually free with Achieve. Any student that buys Achieve gets the ebook, the homework, and iClicker. It's all integrated and it's all included. And to sync it, you simply need to click on sync. This is my iClicker sign in so that it knows what account I'm syncing with. And then I simply pick the course I want to sync with. I click save. And because there was work in that course already, the iClicker course, that work automatically shows up in my Achieve gradebook. Every session I run will now be a column in my Achieve gradebook, and I can combine them under a group or a section if I want to. So it makes it really easy to make iClicker a part of the grade. Most people that have used it make it a, like a 10% part of the grade, which makes attendance mandatory. It makes participation and engagement mandatory. And frankly, students have tended to really like the interactivity of it. And as Kiandra mentioned, it is an app on a phone now or a device if students prefer, and they can work together. Most of them want the app, as you can imagine. So one more check for questions. I think that was it.
So Scott, can I give one more pointer with the iClicker?
Absolutely. Please do.
One more tool or way that I use the iClicker. So yes, you have the slides, and yes, you have them inside of the in-class activities. The iClicker is also really great for location type problems. And Scott, please correct me with the proper terminology. So say for example, we're looking at the max and mins of a function. I can just ask the students on their phones to circle or identify where do you think the max and min is. So you can use iClickers for questions aside from multiple choice and free response. So yeah, if you want additional information of how I specifically use iClicker in the classroom, please feel free to contact me.
Yes, it's like a spot identify type of question. The way I explain it, I explain it in a very simplistic way. When we have people in, one of the first things we do with iClick, when we have groups of outside folks in, we put up a map of the world or the United States, depending on what the group's from, and say, please click on the place you're from. And they're on their phone, they'll get that map and they can just put their finger on, Connecticut in my case, New Orleans in Kiandra's case. But it's really cool. And the spot identify can obviously be used for any variety of things and just about all disciplines, including mathematics. iClicker floats, so you can take any image and just put it up and it automatically becomes a question. It's really cool technology. If you haven't checked out clickers in general, I can't exhort you enough to definitely give them a look. They've come a long way, and they really do add an element to the class that is powerful. Thank you very much, Kiandra. Nancy, I'll turn it over to you. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate your time and your participation today. And Kiandra, thank you so much. We do have one more of these tomorrow. We will be sending a recording of this out, and in that email, there'll be a place where you can request access to Achieve, and we encourage you to do so. And
when you get the return email, feel free to respond to that. If you would like to have access to Achieve, we'll make sure you get that. Or if you would like to have a demo, we'll set you up with a demo. Feel free to share the recording that you get in the follow-up with your colleagues and send us any questions you have. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day. Or like